A word of caution. This episode features descriptions of the violent murder of a young woman. Please take care when listening. An impressionable South Carolina woman meets a respected soldier in her hometown and, after a whirlwind romance, marries him and hopes to begin a family. But he soon shows her a different side of his personality, one she doesn't think she can live with. In the process of their separation, she goes missing and is found murdered in an abandoned house not far from where she lives. When police go to question her husband, they find he has already moved on from the relationship and has a new underage girlfriend. Not long after, he leaves the area, and it will take 6 long years before he answers for his crimes. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the two states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day. But all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas. Episode 155, The Murder of Cati Blauvelt from South Carolina. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I've discussed several cases tied to domestic violence in this podcast, including Nancy Cooper from episode 18, Missing Runners in North Carolina, Patty Jo Pulley from episode 45, Across State Lines, Marianne and Elaine Boskowski in episode 48, Two Wives, Two Deaths, and Shelby Wilkie from episode 85. In episode 116, I covered the murders of Marianne Willis and Dara Watson from South Carolina. These two women were both victims of domestic violence. In Marianne's case, she was following all the proper channels and was murdered in the legal affairs office of the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base in South Carolina when she showed up to testify against her husband. Dara Watson's story was a bit different and also frightening because no one in her life believed she was in any danger. In fact, from the outside, it appeared she and her husband David had a storybook marriage. What their friends and family didn't know was that David was struggling with personal and professional issues, and after Dara went missing, he took his own life. They will never know if Dara had been a victim of abuse prior to her death or if her husband snapped on the day he murdered her. Intimate partner homicides make up approximately 10% of all U.S. murders. Females make up approximately 70% of victims killed by an intimate partner. The National Domestic Violence Hotline describes the different types of abuse a person can experience, and I wanted to give an overview of them here. First, there is the most commonly known physical abuse, which involves the use of physical violence, or threats of it, to maintain power over an individual. This can include the threat of violence to a person's children, other family members, or pets as a form of control. Emotional abuse includes non-physical behaviors that are meant to control, isolate, or frighten someone. This partner will call you names, insult you, act jealous or possessive, monitor your activities without your knowledge, try and control what you wear, constantly accuse you of cheating, and more. Sexual abuse is when a partner controls the physical and sexual intimacy in a relationship. A victim may be forced to dress in a sexual way they aren't comfortable with, be forced into performing sexual acts against their will, etc. Financial or economic abuse occurs when an abusive partner uses their power to control a victim's financial situation. This includes providing an allowance, monitoring how it is spent, demanding receipts, depositing your paycheck into an account you can't access, maxing out your credit cards and harming your credit score, stealing money from you, stopping you from working so that you can't financially provide for yourself, and others. There's also technology-facilitated abuse, which includes sextortion, intimate partner surveillance, and using online spaces to bully, harass, stalk, intimidate, and control a partner. Stalking is a form of abuse, as is spiritual abuse, which may involve an elder or a faith leader inflicting abuse on members of a congregation or fostering a toxic culture. Perpetrators practicing spiritual abuse can also deny the other partner the right to practice their own religion, manipulate or shame their partner's religious beliefs, or use religion to justify or minimize abusive behaviors. Peter Lucas Moses Jr. from Durham, North Carolina, used both spiritual and physical abuse on his victims in episode 150, The Murders of Antoinetta McCoy and Jaden Higginbotham. Today I want to discuss the case of a young woman who was murdered as she was trying to leave an abusive partner and the toxic environment he had created in their home. Like Marianne Willis's story, it also involves a partner with ties to the U.S. Army at the time of the crime. Cati Boyder had just turned 20 when she met 26-year-old Cati Blauvelt, who had a recruiting office for the U.S. Army close to where Cati worked at a local sub-sandwich shop in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Her mom described her as bubbly, friendly, outgoing, and with a passion for all animals. She was attending community college. She was also a very petite young woman, standing only 5 feet 1 inch tall. When Cati met John, he was married, but told her he was in the process of a separation. He had a young daughter. Cati and John soon began dating, and Cati seemed very happy. In the summer of 2015, John encouraged her to enlist in the Army as a new recruit. But after doctors discovered she had scoliosis, she received a medical discharge out of the Army. Cati's family at first was skeptical about John. Her mother, Patty Piver, told 48 Hours that John never seemed that interested in getting to know their family. Then, after about a year of dating, Cati surprised everyone when she came home and told them she and John had gotten married at the local courthouse. They went on a honeymoon and returned home to settle into a 4-bedroom home John already owned in nearby Fountain Inn. Cati got a job at a local PetSmart. But soon, the house became a haven for a host of local students, most from nearby Hillcrest High School, where John worked as an Army recruiter. He had a habit of cozying up to the students, many of them female, and inviting them to the Blauvelt home, where he provided marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, and sometimes acid. Cati quickly grew disillusioned with her marriage. She wanted to start a family, not live in a glorified party house 24/7. But her pleas to John fell on deaf ears. As the distance grew between the couple, he turned to 17-year-old Hannah Thompson, who had no qualms in bad-mouthing Cati to her friends. After only 3 months of marriage, Cati saw the writing on the wall and moved out of the home she shared with John and back in with her mother. He immediately moved Hannah into his bedroom. On February 26, 2016, Hannah's father reported to the police that he hadn't seen her for 2 weeks, and they were dispatched to John's home to inquire about Hannah's whereabouts. At first, John refused to go outside and talk to the police. He stayed inside the home with Hannah and several other minors. Police drew their weapons finally and ordered him to once again exit the house. Eventually, John opened the door and spoke with the police. On February 27, 2016, he was arrested and charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. When police interviewed Cati, she told them about an incident a month before his arrest where he had pointed a gun at her head. He repeatedly threatened her life and the lives of her family members. The Fountain Inn Police Department then charged him with domestic violence. Both parties were issued restraining orders and told not to see one another. Amid his legal troubles, the U.S. Army cut John's pay and suspended him from his recruiting duties. He was livid and blamed Cati. She planned to file for divorce, but still went over to his house occasionally because her dog was living there. Meanwhile, John was telling the high school students who frequented his home that he was going to kill Cati because she had ruined his life and military career. They thought he was only venting. On October 24, 2016, Cati went to her job at PetSmart, but failed to return to her mother's house. She wasn't answering her cell phone. Her mother, Patty, feared the worst and reported her daughter missing to the police. She shared her fears that Cati Blauvelt had done something to Cati. It was 2 of Cati's friends who decided to check an old abandoned farmhouse popular with local teenagers who wanted to party. The property had been vacant for more than 20 years and wasn't easy to get to. A dirt path led to the house, which was surrounded by woods. Cati and John had frequented the house in the past. There, the friends discovered a horrific scene in the basement and knew their hunch had been correct. Cati was there, and she was dead. On October 26, 2016, police were dispatched to an abandoned farmhouse in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Cati's body was folded into a rectangular concrete box, a knife blade still hanging out of her body. She had been stabbed in the neck, the blade going in at least 6 inches. Investigators Captain Cheryl Schofield and Keith Moorcraft were at the crime scene and later said they believed Katie had been murdered in the driveway to the home and then moved to the basement. When they went to inform Katie's husband, John, that she had been discovered deceased, he appeared distraught at first. But as the conversation progressed, the investigators grew suspicious. He didn't ask where his wife had been found or how she had died. Instead, he asked if he was being charged with a crime. He later visited the funeral home where Katie's body was and took 17-year-old Hannah Thompson with him. Police questioned him again and said he came off as arrogant and cocky, blaming Katie for everything that had gone wrong with his life and career. They also talked to Hannah, but she claimed not to know anything about the details of Katie's murder. She grew upset when they tried to show her a photo of Katie taken during her autopsy. John didn't try to conceal his guilt, fleeing town with Hannah Thompson. The Army classified him as a deserter shortly thereafter. On November 18, 2016, police charged John Blauvelt with Katie's murder. U.S. Marshals were dispatched to assist in locating John. Investigators uncovered surveillance photos of Hannah and John shopping, and they caught images of his red Yukon truck traveling through Texas and New Mexico. But after a month on the run, Hannah called her family from Eugene, Oregon, asking to return home to Simpsonville. She sat down with investigators upon her return. She told them John had left her in Oregon and that the two had been living out of his vehicle and did frequent a few homeless shelters. He didn't give her a reason why or tell her where he was going when he left. But while they were on the run, he admitted to Hannah that he had murdered Katie and shared the grisly details of the murder. John Walsh featured John and the details of Katie's murder on the show In Pursuit with John Walsh in 2019. The Unsolved Mysteries podcast aired an episode about the case on October 13, 2021. Hannah gave police conflicting details of her knowledge of the crime, but they chose not to charge her because they needed her testimony to solidify the case against John. Hannah admitted dropping John off by PetSmart the day Katie went missing, and later helping to move Katie's car. Though they stayed in regular contact with Hannah, police grew no closer to finding out where John Blauvelt was hiding. Until 6 years after the murder, when the young woman finally admitted she had been in regular contact with John the entire time he'd been on the run. They communicated via Facebook Messenger and then Snapchat. The conversations eventually ended in 2019, with John admitting he was living with another woman in Oregon. U.S. Marshals staked out the home of the woman John was living with. On July 20th, 2022, when John exited the home, shirtless, the Marshals made their move. At first, John tried to tell them he was Ben Klein and they had the wrong man, but they recognized tattoos on him that were unique to John. He had a pirate and banner with a rose and sunset on his right arm, a yin-yang symbol on his left forearm, the name Madison on his left wrist, and a parrot on the right side of his chest. Madison was the daughter he shared with his estranged wife. Along with these identifying tattoos, the Marshals took mobile fingerprints on the scene, further confirming his identity. His girlfriend was blindsided by the news and told the Marshals she had no idea John was a wanted man out of South Carolina. She'd been working to support the two while he mostly stayed home and cared for her pets. Before we continue, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. I had been unhappy with my old podcast host for a while and was looking for other options. I discovered Riverside FM and learned that for one low monthly fee, it would help me record the podcast and utilize video capabilities. It uses AI technology to easily create clips from each episode that I can then share on my social media accounts. I don't consider myself to be very tech savvy, but audio and video editing with Riverside FM software has been a breeze, and I actually look forward to recording days now. If you're looking for a company that will help you with all your podcasting, webinar, and video needs, I encourage you to check out Riverside FM. You won't be disappointed. I'll include a link for you in the show notes. After several years of using the products, I'm still singing the praises of the SkinX Aaron products offered by Midnight Riff. I love Aaron Sanderson's skincare line so much, I became an ambassador so I could earn a small commission off telling everyone just how much I appreciate the Pre-Cleanse Oil, Hydrating Beauty Oil, and Perfecting Night Oil. My skin is acne-free, even in the throes of perimenopause, and looking brighter and more youthful than ever. And don't just take my word for it. Here are a few recent reviews from other people who love the products just as much as I do. Leah says, I have been using the 3-piece set for a few years now. I can't live without it. It truly is the holy grail of skincare. My skin is so soft and healthy. I'm a lifelong user. I love it. Another user wrote, I love this oil. I'm 47 and my skin soaks it up. I've been using it for many years now, so it's like hot sauce. I use it on everything. Itchy knees, cuts on my hand, my daughter's dry lips, and of course, my face. Now I'm ready for the groupie-sized gallon bottle. On average, the oils last around 3 months, and despite their names, they won't make your skin oily. Try them out for yourself with my code MissingCarolinas10 for 10% off your order. And now, let's get back to the show. John Blauvelt was extradited back to South Carolina to await trial. Police arrested Hannah Thompson and charged her with 5 felonies, including obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. She pleaded not guilty and was released on bail. When John's trial started, it became clear the prosecution's case relied mostly on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of Hannah Thompson and others. John had kept a journal during his time on the run, and in one entry he wrote in bold letters, I did it, although he didn't specify what it was. John's defense team forced Hannah to admit her story about what John told her had changed over the years. They pointed out she had lied to police, her friends, her family. They said there was a lack of DNA evidence at the scene of the murder. The trial began in September 2024 and lasted 4 days. In their opening statement, John Metters, a prosecutor for the South Carolina Attorney General's office, read a page out of John Blauvelt's journal. He wrote the entry in December 2016, and it was addressed to his daughter, Madison. Someday, I hope you understand why I did it. The girl was evil to me. She treated me like dirt. She took everything from me, including you. I'm sorry that I had to do it, but there was no other way for me. Sorry, bud. I love you. One of the high school students who had hung out at Katie and John's home said he convinced her and others that Katie was trying to stop them from hanging out together. He asked her if she wanted to go to Charleston, South Carolina, so he could kill his wife. He kept a to-do list on the refrigerator, and one of the items on that list was, get rid of Katie. John had heard Katie was seeing someone else and enlisted Hannah Thompson to spy on her at the home where she was staying. He also had Hannah help him figure out what kind of car she was driving, as she had purchased a different vehicle after their separation. On the morning of October 24th, 2016, Hannah drove John to work in his gold Prius. When he got off work, she drove him to the PetSmart where Katie worked. Cati Blauvelt had used her cell phone on October 24th at 4:17 p.m. to take a selfie from inside her car. After that, it appears she traveled to that abandoned house with John. Did he take her against her will? We'll never know. Katie fought off the attack by John, and defensive wounds on her hands showed this during the autopsy. She pleaded for her life, but he murdered her with a steak knife anyway. He then took Katie's car and drove away from the scene. At 5:03 p.m., John called Hannah. He sent her an instant message at 5:04 p.m. asking her to check out your Snapchat. The contents of that message were then deleted from his phone. In the weeks before Katie was murdered, John's Google searches included the questions, how to sharpen a knife, when can police tap your phone, and what do I do when my wife dies? John Blauvelt declined to take the stand in his own defense. After deliberating for 5 hours, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. 33-year-old John Blauvelt was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In an article that ran in the Greenville News on July 24, 2022, Katie's mom, Patricia, said the last message family members got from Katie was a Facebook message with a purple flower saying, "Send this to the people you love most, and if they love you, they'll send it back." Her mother also confirmed her daughter had been the victim of domestic violence, and she knew how difficult it was to leave that type of relationship with the amount of manipulation perpetrators use on their victims. Katie's sister, Brandy Blackwell, said Katie had come by her house in the days before she went missing to find clothes she could wear to work. Her sister noticed she was looking much healthier since she'd made the decision to leave John. In August of this year, Hannah Thompson pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and concealing a felony and received 3 years of probation. Katie's mom, Patty Piver, was not pleased with the sentencing. She told Fox Carolina news station, in part, For her, this is just a slap on the wrist for what she did, but it's like a punch in the gut to my family. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. If you are a victim of domestic violence and need to seek help, you can visit thehotline.org, call 800-799-SAFE, or text START to 88788. There's also a National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline at 866-311-9474. Please stay safe. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people profiled on the show. Do you know of a missing persons case or crime in North or South Carolina that you think should be covered? Email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. All episodes are researched and written by me, Renee Robertson, with sound editing provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.